What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of The Jungle this morning. And guys, with me today, I have Nick Stevenson. And Nick is a great guy, man. We both go to Powerhouse together. I've noticed Nick from afar for a couple years now. And just recently, we have started talking and kind of building somewhat of a friendship. And he's just one of the most humble. And you look at Nick and it's funny because I always thought Nick is tattooed from head to toe, and I always thought Nick had been to prison. And while he has a amazing story, I approached Nick on the front end and was like, hey man, you've been to prison, right? You want to come on the podcast? And he was like, no, never been to never been to jail. So I had to laugh, and I'm like, if the shoe fits, we're gonna wear it. So, but no, Nick is a amazing guy. He's got an incredible story. We're going to get into that. He has his own personal training business called Become the After, which he operates out of the North Canton, Ohio area. So today we're going to talk about fitness. We're going to talk about God. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. And guys, before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, YouTube seems to be doing the best for the show right now. So if you guys are subscribing on YouTube or just tuning into YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe. The channel is not monetized. That was never my purpose, but all that does is push us up in the rankings for other people to hear the message and kind of get us out there to help more people. So appreciate all my past people that have come on the show. I definitely appreciate Nick coming on today, man. So without further ado, guys, this is Nick Stevenson from Become the After Personal Training. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? Thank you so much for the introduction. That was really nice. And I appreciate you so much for thinking of me and wanting to share my story and to thank you so much for that introduction. That was very nice of you.
Well, dude, I got to tell you, so when we first moved to North Canton, we live right down from Twisted Olive, and we used to go into Twisted Olive all the time, and you were serving down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to love your tattoos from afar, and like I knew we had started going to Powerhouse, but I'm not the type. Sometimes I'm the type of guy that'll just walk up and strike up a conversation, but 9 times out of 10, I gotta like feel you out first.
Same.
But we've been going to Powerhouse for a while, man, and I'll watch you with other guys in the gym, like training, and it's always funny because when you're around, I like to pop my headphones off because I love how you talk and motivate some of your guys, man. Like you're not afraid to talk shit. You're not afraid to tell them they're messing up. You're not, and I love it. And so anytime I'm like within earshot of you, I'll normally like pop my headphones off and see what you guys are talking about or whatever. But you've always been you're extremely kind, and you are even more humble, man. Just the conversations that I've gotten to have with you, you're just an all around nice guy. And I love running into you at the gym. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on here because I think from what we talked about before the show, I think this is going to be a good episode. You have a good story. So let's get into it.
Yeah. Let's go.
So why don't you just tell us real quick, like, where'd you grow up? Where are you from? What your childhood was kind of like?
I grew up in Florida, Coral Springs, Florida. My childhood was actually really good. I probably lived at an upper middle class home. We traveled a lot. My dad was an architect, and he would build shopping plazas, and then we would travel to location, and he would also design them and lease them out. So I lived in New York, California. So I got to travel a lot when I was a kid and live in different places. So until I was about 8 years old, my childhood was about as perfect as it can be. I had about 5 other boys in the neighborhood. We were all best friends. So it was an incredible experience. I did martial arts my whole life since I was 5 years old. So I was always into doing athletics, every sport. I'd say when I turned about 8 or 9 years old, my parents had separated. My dad essentially took me to Ohio without telling my mom. It was a really kind of traumatic story, but private investigators had to come find me. Took me back to Florida. And then on the plane home, my mom tells me, that's not your real dad. So that was pretty traumatic at the time. So I think I was going into 3rd grade or something, but it kind of felt like childhood ended at about that point.
So you were about probably 7, 8 years old?
So life definitely took a different turn after that. The separation of my parents, my mom selling the house, moving to apartments, and then it just seemed that life kind of took a downward spiral as far as the home went. My mom being single, living situations kept getting more dire and less. Getting into adolescence when having clothes and having those things became more important, I started getting less of it. not caring about school, just not having any direction. Um, my mom was broken herself, so it was just very difficult. Um, and when I essentially moved out when I was 16 years old. I was living on like friends' couches, things like that, and so I'd kind of been on my own since 16. I did get reacquainted with my dad um, during that period of time, and he would help me out from time to time, which was really it really saved my life in a lot of ways too.
No,
Uh,
you're talking your biological father.
no, I mean I call him my dad because he's been there since I was the day I was born.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he's never not really been in my life. There was a period during I'd say the middle school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I didn't have him in my life really, and that was bad living situation at that point. By ninth or 10th grade, I decided to drop out of high school and get my GED. I started going to college right away at FAU. I'd had my own apartment. I was delivering pizzas, and the dude that I was living with was an alcoholic, and he was dating one of my buddy's girlfriends, and he decided to go back to his wife and kids, and I got kind of stranded in this apartment by myself, with a delivery job. And my dad had been in contact with me, and he had offered to move me up to Ohio a few different times, and I was like, well, no, my friends were my family at that point, and but it got to the point where the electric was getting shut off. I had nowhere to go. My friends are either going to jail or getting in trouble or in gangs or selling drugs, and I just kind of made a decision. I called him and I said, once the power went out to the apartment, I said, does your offer still stand? And he helped me get a car and an apartment. And so just before I turned 20 or 21, I moved to Canton, Ohio. And
Can I ask you real quick, because you just made a statement that all your friends were selling drugs and I mean doing illicit things. What was the driving? I mean, obviously, if you were down on your luck, low on money, what was the driving factor behind you not wanting to engage in those activities or get into that lifestyle?
well, I don't think anybody they don't think they're bad person or they're doing things wrong. And that was kind of like my little logic for what I was doing at the time. It was like I hung out with gang members, but I wasn't in the gang.
Yeah,
So I was like, well, I'm not in the gang. They're just my friends, but they're going to jail. They're getting arrested,
yeah.
and they're selling drugs. And I would smoke weed and do things like that a little bit. It wasn't really, but I had some bad experiences with that, so I didn't really want to do that anymore. And then I just kept seeing more and more people get in trouble and go to jail, and I didn't want that. And I just knew that I just had this feeling. I said that if I stayed, I was either gonna wind up dead or go to jail.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so
So
you move so your dad helps you move up to Ohio. Have you always lived in Canton, Ohio since then?
there was 3 years I moved to Michigan near Detroit for work, and then I lived in Youngstown, Ohio for 3 years too.
Good
So
old Youngstown.
huh?
Good
Yeah,
old
worst
Youngstown.
situation to worst situation. Let's see how bad you
Um,
can really make it.
right. Okay, so you move up to Ohio. You are how old at this point?
I moved up here when I was 20.
Okay, so you're 20 years old, moving up to a area you're not real familiar with, new location. What was your next plan of action? Like what did you get into at that point?
My attempt was to go back to school, but I was actually a little bit more interested in making friends and connecting and having a social network, which was more important. Felt and this is part of the story too, where I'll go into like nobody owes you anything, and I felt owed.
Oh
Unfortunately,
yeah.
in that period of my time, I felt that my dad owed me for you know I blamed him for my life turning out the way it did, and didn't hold accountability for it. So my main goal was to make friends and to have a life that I didn't get to really enjoy.
It's funny you brought that up, being that young of an age and feeling like you're entitled and feeling you're owed, man. That was a big part of my downfall early in life. Dude, I came from a good neighbor. I came from a good family. Mom and dad were together. It's not like they were separated. Dad worked for ODOT, owned some businesses. Like we didn't want for anything. And the older I got, I felt like I was more important than I was. I felt entitled to everybody just owes me because I'm me. And I always fall back on like it takes people a while to understand that yes, in your own mind, you're the center of your own universe, but you have to eventually learn how to like step out of that and look at how you're affecting other people
Right.
to grow. And I don't know if it's, I'm not going to say it's not possible for kids that age to do that, because obviously it's possible. But for me, it wasn't. Like I was 100%. I'm the center of my own universe. I'm only worried about myself. I was selfish. I was, I was an asshole, man. But to be able to like finally step out and realize you're not the center of your own universe is a game changer when you start taking other people's perspectives into
Sure.
consideration. So, okay, you're
And I didn't learn that, and I didn't really get that concept till way later.
Oh, I didn't either. I didn't.
Probably
I
almost
literally.
almost 40 years old almost.
I was gonna say I was in my 30s. I had done prison time. I had finally like done like some deep diving on myself. I'd say honestly. So my wife and I have been together going on. She's gonna kill me because I'm gonna get it wrong. Going on like 8 years. But I'd say for the first five of those years, I was incapable of stepping outside of my zone too, and it caused problems in our relationship too. It's just been the last couple of years that I've gotten in the semi to where I've actually had to like sit with myself, my thoughts, my actions, and like do a deep dive on myself while I'm out there by myself for a week at a time. That I've actually like, I think I've grown the most. I've grown exponentially in these last couple of years because I have all the time in the world to sit and dissect why I'm thinking this way, why I did this, why, you know what I mean? All the whys and the whats. Okay, so what kind of work did you get into when you moved up here?
So, like I said, when I was living in Florida, I had two different jobs at that time. I was basically delivering pizzas, and I worked for this little small Italian restaurant. The son owned it. The dad used to own it. The mom was the hostess. The sister was the waitress. So like they loved me there. I got to eat a free meal every day. I got paid under the table. I worked like 5-6 hours a night. So it was a neat little gig, and I did a little construction, hanging mirrors and things like that. But so when I got to Ohio, I always wanted to work in a restaurant because I wanted to, I wanted the social network. I wanted to make friends.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I don't know. In my head, I thought it was like the coolest job. And like I
Hey
wanted.
man, I served. I used to love serving. It was one of the funnest jobs I ever had.
Yeah, it trapped me. And when I first moved up here, I got a job, and I don't know if you remember it, but it's where Chick-fil-A is now. But there used to be a restaurant called Thirsty Dog.
Okay.
And they just it was like a brewery place, and they interviewed me, and I like lied and said, I was able to take like 5 tables at a time, which is like a lot. And so I was horrible. I should have been fired like a million times. I would forget to go take care of tables or ring things in. I don't know. I ended up learning enough at a certain period to kind of get it, but I was like, I don't know how they let it go because I was bad. And then I just kind of worked in restaurants. After that, I kept upgrading. I went to Carrabba's, which at that time was like the nicest place in the area. And then from Carrabba's, I did management and stuff and traveled a little bit and was opening up stores and learned how to bartend, got a little bit more acclimated to what it was about, and developed the skill set of a little bit of higher end status. And then I got a job at Gervasi Vineyard and really excelled there. And then I also had run the main property for a couple of years, and it just wasn't a good fit on everybody's part. So they let me kind of start serving again. And that's when I went to their branch restaurant, the Twisted Olive, and served there. And I was just able to make a good living doing it for what it was.
Yeah.
I was making more money than most people did. I worked a full-time job, and I was working 30 hours a week, and I was bringing home, pretty decent money to pay my bills and live on my own. But I wanted more. I wanted more out of life, obviously, and or maybe not obviously. Maybe some people are okay with that, which is okay too. But it, put food on the table, so I got no arguments with it. It just
No, I'll tell you where I know where you were waiting at. Like I said, that's where I first, because I mean you're obviously you're noticeable with all the tattoos, and and you're in great shape. So I always, not to like, my wife always makes fun of me. She's like, "Quit man crushing on guys." I'm like, "Yeah, but if they're like, you know what I mean." But no, and I remembered seeing you. Like I said, the first time I had ever noticed you was we had been to Powerhouse, and you were at the Twisted Olive. And the Twisted Olive is a nice spot, and I got friends that have served down there. I've got friends that are currently serving at Gervasi's. You can make a hell of a living serving. So I've never deterred anybody or said,
oh, no.
"Hey,
I
yeah."
was,
But
I mean, there'd be times where it was like, this is just, I I had opportunities to get other jobs that maybe made the same amount per year, but I would have to work an extra 10 to 20 hours a week to
Yeah.
get it. And I was like, and I'd have to work. I
Yeah.
was like,
No. So,
this is nothing. All I get to do is sell some food and sling some drinks, and all I got to do is have a personality and be attentive. So I was like, nothing was able to get me to go past that. So the only thing that would have, I was looking for that other thing, but I wanted it to be financial. So if I
yeah.
was going to leave, it needed to be
Worth
way
it.
more than what I was making there, and then also something maybe I had more passion in.
Yeah. So then, okay, let's get into that then, because you obviously started your own personal training company. So for those that don't know, it's called Become the After. Talk about what made you want to get into personal training. I mean, obviously it was the wanting.
Well, I've always been interested in it. I just did not know that it was going to be something that was going to be financially lucrative enough for me to make a transition. So even in my early 30s, people say, why don't you train? And I'm like, well, I didn't have the confidence in myself to. I'm like, well, I see other guys that are in better shape, that seem more knowledgeable. I'm like, why would I do that if I know that there's many more other people that can do it that don't do it? Why would I step into that realm?
Yeah.
I feel like I wasn't the right guy for the job. I enjoy it and I have a passion for it, but I didn't think that was. I felt like there was other people better suited for it, so I just didn't have the confidence to do it. And how I ended up finally stepping into that realm is like I kept trying to find other jobs and things that I had passion for, and it just never was the right fit. And I was a fireman for a little bit on paper. I went to school for that and got certified, and I just didn't follow through with it and kind of let the card go and things like that. And it wasn't until COVID happened. I was just, they were really harping down on everyone getting vaccines and getting shots, and we're having to wear masks, and I just didn't like anything about it. And I
Yeah.
didn't like being forced. I didn't like being told to do something that if I wasn't sure about or didn't feel it was necessary for me for the things that I research. My opinions are not, other people have different ones, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my thing. You do what you want to do, and I'll do what I want to do.
Yeah. But that whole time frame was weird, man. It was just wild thinking back on everything that happened, just forcing that stuff down people's throats. And we won't get into it because, like you said, there's people that believe in it, and good on you. That's your beliefs. But I was on the same boat as you. I was very adamant of accepting some sort of new vaccine technology that had no scientific backing or any of that, and just here we're going to shoot you with this, and then
Right. But
your test subject number 436,000.
they were being very aggressive as far as like where they stood as far as like what you should be doing, and I didn't like that either. And
Well, and you were in the service industry at that point, so they were already shutting those down. So I'm sure at that point,
if you got a shot and I didn't, then you didn't have to wear a mask and I did. So I was like,
yeah,
well, that's kind of defeating the whole. I don't know. It
yeah,
was just there was lots of like talking out of both sides of your mouth, and I just didn't. I just didn't like it. I wasn't about it, and I was like, well, please God, help me find something else. Like I don't have a lot more options. I felt like I'm getting older. Like I'm either gonna do this as a profession for life, or like I need.
yeah,
And I had reluctantly walked past. I was training to do a bodybuilding competition, and I reluctantly walked past another two talking about personal training. One was a trainer or a new trainer, and one was not. And the kid was telling him how he wanted to be a personal trainer, and I was preparing to do a bodybuilding competition, and I just kind of eavesdropped and chimed in and said, "Well, that's something I've always wanted to do." And I told them the same thing I told you. I just didn't think financially I could do it. Well, the one guy was really nice enough and sat me down and told me how much he charged per client, helped me figure out the math. This is how many clients you would need. I was like, even if it was lateral, I was like, how many would I need? And he helped me do the math, and I looked at it and I was just like, I think I could do that. And then I started to prepare for it and got the certification, and I got a couple, clients. That was the other good thing about working at a restaurant too, is if I still hung on to that, I would just be pulling clients all day long
yeah.
because I was just selling myself all day. But I had like 3 or 4 clients right out of the gate, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
I like that you said that because in the restaurant industry, you are selling yourself all the time. So it's funny because when I was serving, and I'm sure you got this all the time too, it was always, so is this your only job? Like, or what else do you do? And
Right.
I'd be like, nothing, I serve. What are you talking about?
Right.
So, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. But I had ego things when it came to things like that, I guess, when it came to serving, as I made it a point to make sure people knew that I was a professional about my knowledge and my skill set. But so yeah, I had a few clients, and then I was scared to, like, I was full-time status, so that means I got the schedule that I wanted, I got to stay later if I wanted, I got my insurance, I got a lot of little perks that helped me make sure that I was making my status quo of what I wanted to make every single week, you know
Yeah.
as far as the restaurant goes. So I got those clients, and I was like, oh, this is great. So my first little step, into the water was like, okay, we got to get rid of full-time status now, because I got to be able to take on a little bit more clients, and I did, and just kind of snowballed from there. And then I went from 4 days a week to 3 days a week to every other weekend, and just finally let it go. And I kind of wish a little bit I would have saved it just to always have something in the back corner. But I was like, I was done with it. I was glad to be going
Yeah.
with it. But yeah, and then here I am, almost 3 years later, still training and doing my thing. But
I was gonna say I was at Powerhouse when you started this journey. And it's you and there's I think two other trainers up there that are the main line. Like that's who people go to see, and it's grown. I like seeing guys that I'm a big advocate for guys that do their own thing and succeed on their own, entrepreneurs, self-starters, whatever you want to call them. I've got a lot of buddies that do stuff like that, and I always applaud them. I always take my hats off to them. They're and I love watching me, having been a Powerhouse member for the last 6-7 years, and seeing what you built when I walk in, seeing the little digital display with all of your clients that you've had, and all the swag that like guys are wearing to the gym that become the after shirts and things like that. Man, you've built something amazing, and I love stories like that, like underdog stories. That's what the whole podcast is
sure.
about. That's why I wanted to have you on. So it's amazing, man, and I'm proud of you. I know we're not great friends, but just as somebody on the outside that appreciates an underdog story, like I'm proud of what you've done, because it's good shit, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Um, so you've been at this for 3 years now. Any Just to go off on the side, then we're going to get over to religion and things like that. Another part that we said we were going to talk about. What is something that you would encourage anybody looking for a personal trainer to ask or look for, or maybe look out for, in regards to finding a personal trainer for them?
Well, here's the thing about personal training, which I'll say is that am I the most knowledgeable person in the world? No. I'm not. I don't have the highest IQ. I don't have the highest knowledge about fitness. I know how to do it. I know how to make it work. I know how to make sure somebody doesn't get injured. Does somebody be able to explain your fibers and your muscles on how they're engaging a little bit better? Absolutely. What I will say, you need to find somebody that's competent. You know, am I confident and competent enough to make sure that, whatever your goals are, do you want to put on a little bit of muscle? Do you want to drop a little bit of weight? Yes, I can take you there. And if there's a limit to, like, I'm not confident or feel confident enough to put somebody in a bodybuilding show yet, but I would like to be. But when I am, I'll definitely announce that. But that being said, is that you can be the smartest person in the world and have the most knowledge in the world and know about workouts and everything else. But if you don't have the right personality and you don't have the demeanor, the person's not going to receive it and not going to listen to it.
Yeah,
So, you have to find somebody that's relatable enough to you that you want to, you have to trust them. It's a hard thing to trust when you're changing your diet and you're changing your fitness and you're listening to somebody pour their motivation and their knowledge into you. And it's cool to take somebody on that journey. And I actually just had this conversation. So yeah, I mean, to answer the question is, you need to find somebody that you, one, can relate to and get along with, and that you trust that they're going to take you to that point. Out of all the trainers that I work with in the gym, there's not one in there that I say can't get you to your goal. I don't
yeah,
think that any of them are not capable of doing the same thing that I am, vice versa. It's, which journey do you want to go on? Whose information do you want to listen to? And, do you feel comfortable with that person to put them, let them drive for you and take you there?
yeah,
And that's kind of like where I feel like the restaurant has always helped me in the personal training industry, is that, you know, what I would tell people when I served, or a new server, or somebody that's new into personal training, why are you busy? Why are you getting all these people? What are you doing that somebody else isn't? And first is confidence. You got to know what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
what I would say when it came to serving, it's like, well, if me and you are servers, you got the same uniform I got on. We sell the same food. We got the same menu. We got to sell the same wine. Everything is the same as far as what's at our disposal. So what is the difference? Why am I getting the emails? Why am I getting the regulars? Why are people asking me for my name? And why am I making the most tips? So it's what you're doing inside that box that makes somebody feel comfortable and relatable to, and somebody feels heard, and that's the other thing, you have to have compassion for other people too. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to train people because, and they're smarter than I am, I would say, I don't want to train people because they're just not going to listen and they just can't do it. Well, we didn't all start off like just following this crazy diet and doing all these workouts. The reason why I've always been good at anything is because I've always been the worst at it. And it takes me the longest to understand it. So I understand people's journey when it comes to, maybe not getting it. And I like to watch those wheels slowly turn when they're slowly starting to digest information, or like, oh, I finally get it. And then they go a little bit more and a little bit more. But you have to treat everybody kind of equally different, you know.
Yeah.
And you can't have the same tone and the same relationship with every person. Like you said, sometimes you would eavesdrops on me. Like
Yeah.
maybe that person was able to take a little bit more, but I had to cultivate that relationship to be
Know
able.
what clients, yeah, you can
Right.
push that with.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to talk to one of my clients that's a 57-year-old woman the same way that I'm talking to
Right. No,
something year old
absolutely.
guy.
Absolutely.
Different. It's different, but
Yeah.
they're both getting results that they want, and that's the important part.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on with that. That was kind of the answer I was hoping for. You just have to be personable, and you have to know where to meet people where they're at. And yeah, I mean, you sell yourself, so that's awesome.
And
Oh, go ahead.
And I was going to say, for me too, what I've been learning on this journey myself is that I have a passion for working out. I have a passion for exercise. I don't think that I'll ever not do it as long as my body allows me to in some capacity. And I would say that I like training people, but I love pouring into people and motivating them and watching them
Yes.
really just change. That's what drives me. That's is that when I watch somebody actually change, and not just with their physique, but most of the problems that people have, at least for the people that I work with, is the self-sabotaging and
Yep.
listening to the wrong voice in your head, and I can't do it because of this and this, and stop. To watch them start changing the voices in their head to something with a little bit more optimism and positivity behind it.
Oh, absolutely. I that's part of the reason I do the podcast. I also have about, I'd say at this point, 6, 7 guys with weekly calls that I mentor to. Obviously, it's all, I don't charge anything for it. So if anybody's listening and needs somebody to talk to, somebody to vent to, whatever, DM me. My line's always open. But it's just what you said. It's giving back. It's building somebody else up. It's fulfilling for me to do that type of work. And I'm in the perfect seat for it because I'm alone in my truck for 40 hours a week. You know what I mean? So I love doing stuff like that. And I think that would be a game changer as far as society goes if people would stop being so self-centered and thinking you have to work, 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 and it's me, me, me. And people learn to pour back into other people, and people learn that, giving back will actually make you far richer than like mentally and spiritually than going to work and just pounding out 80-hour work weeks will all, like, money doesn't mean shit. I took my kids to the lake yesterday, and I'm sitting there and I'm in the beach chair and I'm looking back and I'm like, I'm just thinking about life, and I'm like, all the work that I do with all these other guys, all my brothers, all the, you know what I mean? And then I get to sit here and I have 2 almost adult age children. One of them is an adult, and I have my 12-year-old son, and they pick us. Like they want to hang out with us. They see the amount of work that I do with other people. They see the amount of, you know what I mean? And they the universe will always give you, and God will always give you what you put out back. It's just, and it might not be in the capacity that you're looking for, but you'll get it back.
It's in his timing for sure.
It is. And no, man, that is the most, just working with guys and being able to, like you said, watch them grow, whether it's mentally or physically or in whatever aspect. That's the biggest reward that I see through all of this.
I get to hear people's stories, and
Yeah.
I have a story, and I've gone through a lot of hardships, and so I can relate. And
Yeah.
usually I can relate to somebody's story in some capacity, and so I know how hard it is.
Yeah.
And I think when you're able to relate to somebody, to know that you've been there. If you're looking at me like, I can't achieve that because he looks like that, or he can do this, or it's like I didn't always have that.
Yeah.
I've gone through the same thing, same struggle, in some different capacity, but similar. Just watching people just slowly change and transform, it's a real blessing.
It is, man. It's one of my favorite things that I have my hands involved with right now. And like I said, you can always make more money, but to feel fulfilled spiritually, mentally, that's the best thing. It's the best feeling I've ever had. So I get it.
You have joy, and there's a
Yeah.
difference between joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you have joy in your life, it's
Yeah. So, all right, talking about joy and happiness, let's talk about you and I had a real quick conversation before we started about just religion and God. And most of the people that probably subscribe to this, at least those that know me, know that, like I said, my brother's a pastor. I have been very far turned off from religion for the past couple of years. I put man in front of God. Like you and I talked, I recently got back onto a new spiritual journey. I'm praying, meditating, having a relationship with God again, and it's been awesome. I have to say, the fact that I walked away from it, and the fact that it's almost like that void. There's a void inside you that you don't know that that's the cause of it necessarily. And I went for years with that void, and now that I'm back, I'm like, oh well, you're an idiot. You should have just kept God in the equation the whole time. Things may not have gotten so hard. But you are recently saved. You're about 7 months into your newfound walk with God. So let's talk about that. What turns you on to church, and what turns you on to religion, or whatever you want to call it?
sure. And I will say, I've always known that God's in my life, but like truly surrendering and handing it over to Him is, that's been the recent thing. And we're in the past, and the thing about it is, like, even when He wasn't, or you said you weren't involved or doing what you should be doing, like, He's still there with you.
Yeah.
And even when I look back, when I'd say that He wasn't there, He was there. But I'm able to look back and see those blessings and all those things that, like, that was Him.
Yeah.
Or, He helped me through that, even though I didn't recognize it. But that's what makes every day moving forward now better for me, because I'm able to recognize it. And when you know that you're not alone, and that, that He is there for you all the time, it just, it creates a lot of, it doesn't make it as hard. And you have, when you have faith in Him. And, but I'll say I had a pretty traumatic past couple of years. I would say I had a rock bottom moment, or I did have a rock bottom moment in my life. And, I had to, make a lot of decisions and changes in my life, and face, face myself, and try to figure out, what is it about me, why I would do certain things, or behave a certain way. And if I was truly going to change for the people that I love, then I needed to, like, figure it out, and not just say I wouldn't do something again, or be a certain way, but like, you can do those things, for a while, and it'll be okay. But whatever those triggers are, you don't know how to deal with them because of your trauma, then they're just going to happen all over again. So trying to navigate that, and trying to become a better version of myself. And I know that has always been my goal, is to grow and to give and to become the best version of myself. If you're the same person every year, like, I don't ever want to look back last year and say, oh, I'm the same guy I was then. I
Yeah.
always want to be doing more and becoming more and giving more. So I have this rock bottom moment, and I spent most of that year just trying to figure it out, and you know, to get my bearings again. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, I still deal with aftermath from it, in a sense, but, I was humiliated in a lot of ways. I disrespected myself, my family. I had, publicly have been humiliated, had to face it every single day. And as much as it was horrible, I'm thinking, and I hadn't surrendered myself to God at that point. But now when I look back, it's like, the only reason I was able to get through is because He carried me. But as I'm working on those things, I'm trying to look inward, and to read things, and that, figure out, what is it about you, and what hurts your relationship, what are things that are, what are things that, when we used to pray, are you leaving out your dirty secrets of the things you don't want to talk about? Like, because he sees everything. So, but
Yeah.
you have to lay them and surrender him at his feet. And, so one of the biggest things for me was, which I always, I never truly thought it was a problem, but like porn, that was an addiction. I look at now is that it was an addiction, and getting rid of it, it's like, well, I'm so disciplined in everything that I do in life, whether it's eating or working out or or everything that I put everything that I have into it, but this one thing I just can't not do.
Yep.
And that was the trigger for me. It's like, well, or I'm not going to do that tomorrow, or I'm not going to do that, today. And then I do it, and I just felt like I was letting myself down every single day. And then also would pour into my relationship and not realize it, because it's like, well, I'm not cheating, I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
But it definitely does. And
No, and I don't think it's talked about enough. And I've struggled with it too. Like I said, I've talked to most of the guys because I don't mind asking that question because it's so prevalent in our society and so readily available, and the effects of it are so they can be so like devastating. Like you said, it'll cause problems in your relationship. It gives guys a false sense of what that's supposed to be. I mean, it's not talked about enough. So I don't mind bridging the gap and like making the initial conversation or having the initial conversation with people, because I've got two teenage, I've got a son that's 12 and I've got Christopher's 20, and I've busted them, you know what I mean? And I've tried to explain this is not good for you. Like what it does to your brain while you're developing, it's not good. What it does
right,
to your brain after you've developed is not good. And it's just so, it's not like where I was a drug addict. It's not like where I got to call my guy up and then I go and I'm like it takes time to like make and work through that action. Whereas porn, you turn around and it's 3 clicks and you're on a website and it's there.
sure. And now it's always in your face with social media in some way, shape, or form, or something triggers you to think of something else.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that guidance at that time to understand those things, or what relationships were for, and you're not creating necessarily false things in the bedroom and things like that. I don't think. I mean, I'm sure it did in some aspects, but the biggest triggers for me was that it became something that was used. Was I having a bad day? Was I having a good day?
Yeah.
Was I bored, or did something make me upset? And using it for those dopamines to
Yeah.
just use it as this thing, and it's like, well, and I would feel depressed afterwards because I wasn't able to control this thing, that was supposed to be nothing, that was too bad. Well, then why do I feel this way? And every time
Yeah.
that I told myself I didn't want to do it, I ended up doing it. There had been a point, I'd say 7 months ago or more, that I finally got control of it, and it gave me a lot of power, inner power and peace, because I was like, you took control of it, and it wasn't gone, and it still will never be gone necessarily. And but as I started that journey, and then I stopped going on social media, really. I started listening to podcasts and listening to influencers of people that I wanted to listen to. And um, and one of the first ones that I had found that I had just really, really captivated me was Steve Weatherford. And I don't know if you know who he is, but he used to play for the New York Giants. He's a punter, or he was a punter, and he found God, and that's what he does. He does podcasts, and he's speaking events, and he just speaks about God, and speaks about men becoming the best versions of themselves. So it's not just about finding a relationship with God; it's also becoming the bigger and better version of you, and growing
Yeah.
throughout the rest of your life. And when I saw his picture, I'm like, oh, that's a jack dude that's talking about this, and I didn't know who he was. And then so I'm like, well, do I want to put my time and listen to this podcast? And the first one that came up was my testimony about, and that was kind of right when I had started mine, and I was like, and I clicked on that, and that's like where it started, that's where God really started, where I noticed, I'm like, oh. And then I found that, and then this other puzzle piece got put in place, and then this other one. It's like he just kept lining things up to make sure that I stayed on my path that I was on, and then it just started to snowball from there. And he went through the surrender prayer, giving yourself over to God, when I was listening to his podcast, and I did it when I was listening to his show. And I had just reached out to him months later just to say thank you through a text, through a private message on Instagram. Didn't ask for anything, just wanted to let him know how he changed my life. And he actually messaged me back, and not just like, "Hey, thanks," but like started asking me questions and like
Oh,
had a
that's
little
cool.
Q&A. And I just thought that that was so great, and that means and that just made me attracted to that person even more, was because they were exactly who they appeared to be, and they weren't afraid to talk about their testimony or talk about he had his demons in football, and how he even winning the Super Bowl was literally the worst day of his life. But he gave his testimony, and it made me feel better about talking about mine. So I shared that with him, and he asked me a lot of questions, and then from there all these little things got put in place. Like I do a men's group now once a week, which I encourage anybody that's trying to better themselves, or that have things they need to surrender to God or put at his feet to find. You have to find the people around you to sharpen you.
Yeah.
You are who you hang around with, or you will be, you are like the 5 people you hang around with the most. And so I started looking for people that were like-minded or on that same journey, or broken men trying to repair their lives. And then so I was looking on his page, and he does these big events at his house, and like they do all these workouts, and they go in the water, and he's taking pictures with everybody at the end of it, like a thank you. And I looked on it one day, and I'm like, oh my god, I know that one guy in the picture. He's from this area, Canton.
Oh,
I was
no
like,
kidding.
holy cow. And so I just, I acknowledged it and told him how awesome, because I know, I've been listening to Steve now for months and months and months, like every podcast I just pour into. So I knew that him being there, like that was an investment, and I know how much change that
Yeah.
he have overcome to be there. Kind of long story short is like I was able to connect with him afterwards, and now that's the kind of my spiritual leader in my men's group that I'm in. Is like it's just crazy, like that I found this person on Spotify, and then I find this other person that I know personally from my
That's
little
local.
my little town that
Yeah.
I live in, and then it all snowballs from there. And and then he also goes to the same church I go to. It's just incredible once you start to really recognize.
Oh, 100%. It's yeah, when you can sit back and you can actually, once you, like I said, once you start pouring in to God, and then you sit back and you just see all the little coincidences, and you're like, that's, you know what I mean? It just solidifies your belief even more. It solidifies this thing is real. Like, and I love it. I love the little God moments, dude. They're my favorite.
They
So,
happen every day, honestly. Like some are bigger than others, and most of them we probably don't even see. But
yeah.
he has perfect timing, and your prayers do get answered when they're supposed to. And I know that I'm a testimony for that. And I had to sacrifice a lot of my professional life. My business isn't exactly where I want it to be. My home is, and that's more important for me. And but you have to put in work. You,
Yeah.
you truly have to put in work and put in change for those things to happen. And because social media and people, they just
No, it's
if
evil,
you're
man.
if you're down, people are gonna try to beat
Yep.
you until you're dead.
Yeah.
And they're just waiting in the wings, and they're waiting under the rocks to just and they still do. But I don't have anything to hide anymore, and I cleaned out my own closet in myself and in my soul. And the only person that I have to worry about is Jesus. And I know that other people have their own issues in life, and that I can walk around with my head up, knowing that not there's not a lot of people that are willing to put that kind of work into themselves, into their
No.
life, to overcome. The only difference is that mine got put on the front page. And if you dig into anybody's life, everybody has their things. And what I've learned during that process also is when I hear stories or hear things, it's everyone deserves a little grace.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be the first person to recognize that when I hear a story or hear gossip, is to not react to it in that way, or I just choose not to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But
No, absolutely. I No, I like that you said everybody deserves grace. I was, hey man, I don't know how much of my story you know, but I was looking at about 28 years prison time when I got arrested, and it was all over the newspapers. Um, People were calling my mom. People were, and we to the point where she eventually moved out of the area. I moved out of the area because it was a small little town. Um, and where you just said everybody deserves grace. Like it's people, like you said, man, people can be ruthless, people can be nasty, but everybody has things going on in their life. And I think most of society, or a lot of society, likes to turn around and point fingers because obviously, if you've got skeletons in your closet that you're not working on, it's easier for me to sit back and point at you and be like, "Oh, well, look at what he's doing. Like that's gross. How could he do that while I've got 10 dead bodies under my baseboard?" You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, man, everybody deserves grace. I appreciate you saying that. So
And not everybody has to like me, and I understand that too. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and not everybody has to forgive me. It's not.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter to me because I don't need to express that to them or have anything to prove
yeah,
to them. And that's the other aspect too. But usually, when people treat you a certain way, it's a reflection on how they view themselves.
yeah,
Those are things that I learned in my journey too, especially when it comes to anger or when it comes to jealousy or all of those things. They stem from own trauma, from something of their own.
yeah,
And it's a weakness in a sense. And I pray for all those people as well. In a lot of ways, even though I have my moments, but the people that hate me the worst or don't like me the most in this world, I just pray that they find peace. And
yeah,
but I just I just try to pour my testimony into others, and they can believe it or not believe it. But that's not my concern. My concern for myself now is to be a vessel to have God pour through and to help them build their relationships back with Him or to Him. And I don't focus on myself. I just, I want things in my life and I pray for them. But, if I pray for things, it's for things to provide for my family
yeah,
and a certain type of life that I want them to have. But going through struggles, I'm not as afraid anymore because I've equipped myself, where before I'm essentially walking in the rain naked with a hurricane, but I feel armed. I feel armed with a rain jacket and a shield and an umbrella and my family and my friends. And that's powerful. And this journey, and it's just the beginning. And I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see. I'm just kind of being patient on listening to God's call, and to surrendering obediently to when I hear it.
I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
No, I will say just recently, like I said, I've gotten back kind of aligned with God spiritually, and it has been, my mom's noticed, my wife has noticed, and it wasn't anything I was talking about. It was for a couple weeks. I was just getting up in my truck every morning, and I used to, I have like my little morning routines, and I would get up, and where it used to be, I listen to metal music, man. So it would be immediately I'm throwing on metal music, headbanger, like just raging out first thing in the morning. And then I started thinking, I'm like, this can't be good for me. Like, I'm not praying. I'm not. So I started waking up, doing meditation for a little bit, praying for a little bit, putting on meditation music, like kind of like grounding myself first thing in the morning, and again establishing a relationship with God. And it's just been amazing. People have noticed. I've noticed. I'm not carrying everything. Did I lose you? I lost you. All right, guys. Just wanted to hop on. We had some technical difficulties, but Nick's phone died, and he is actually taking off to head to church. We're going to try and wrap it later. For those of you interested in the North Canton, Northeast Ohio area, anybody looking for a trainer, Nick does online personal training as well as in-person personal training. His company is called Become the After. Check him out. He is on Facebook under Nick's. Um, yeah, I encourage you all, if you're looking for a good guy just to have a conversation with, reach out to him. Nick, I appreciate you coming on, man. Once again, you are a great dude. I've watched you for quite a while now and seen you grow, and I love watching you grow. One of my favorite things is I surround myself with guys that are only doing better for themselves and have that drive to do better for themselves. And I've just watched you on a upward trajectory for the last couple of years, and it's been really cool to watch, man. I love you. Again, everybody checking us out. Tune into the Jungle episode. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, Castbox, Amazon. I think that's it. I encourage you all on YouTube, hit the likes, hit the subscribes, leave us reviews. That only helps boost us up in the rankings and gets us out there to more and more people. So you guys have a great day. I love you. We'll holler at you.